On the edge of the Canadian Arctic, a community lives alongside the largest land predator on Earth.
They call it the polar bear capital of the world, but it's so much more interesting than that.
A place that's been defined by remoteness, beauty, and danger.
There's a bear there, it's crossing the road. We heard crackers going off and now the polar bear alert team are moving around, so we're gonna get back in the car.
The bear was up on this deck here. It was testing the door.
We don't want him going back to town.
This place, its people, and its polar bears now face an uncertain future.
The longer they're on shore, the longer they're fasting, and the longer they might need to start looking for alternative sources of food.
I really want to better my community. I want to be here in the future. I really hope there is a here.
Churchill, Manitoba. Hugging the edge of the Hudson Bay and at the mouth of the Churchill River. There are no roads connecting it to other towns. The nearest larger settlement is 250 miles away, linked by the century-old rail line.
It's a fascinating place because not only of wildlife, not only of people, but also science and research.
Mike Spence has been mayor here for nearly 30 years.
We've been very privileged to showcase what we have.
It's a rather big question, but what is the history of this place?
This town it's actually a meeting place for Indigenous peoples. It's the Cree, which I'm Cree, the Dene, and the Inuit people. So it was a place of rich history, rich culture. You'll notice that over the next couple of days while you're here that we're a pretty friendly community, and rightfully so in friendly Manitoba.
Friendly Manitoba, nice.
What's made this place famous is its wildlife. When ice on the Hudson Bay is beginning to form at the start of winter, polar bears gather along the shore, close to town. That means there are about as many bears here as there are people.
This is beautiful.
It is. It's a friend of mine who painted it. It's kind of a symbol of all of the footprints, and you notice the bear prints on there as well.
It's something that local artist Sandra Cook and her teenage daughter Kara are always aware of.
Do you have any kind of close encounter stories? Does everyone in Churchill?
I have seen footprints that are a little fresher than I'm comfortable with, and it's been terrifying. Right by where I walk every morning.
Oh, wow.
You know, there's some times when we're in school and we hear bear shots, people firing shots in the air to try to scare the bears away from town because the school's just on the edge of town up there. So wow. We always grew up hearing bear shots and knowing there's a bear just so close, just right outside.
Nature is woven into the history and culture here. Polar bears in particular. Arctic murals adorn walls all over town.
My father was a trapper. My father, would often talk about checking his trap line and coming across some mother and two cubs. Instantly, food on the table, fur, okay? That's how it was back in the day, right? You were harvesting for your family.
But times have changed.
This is their homeland, and this is where they're coming to and waiting.
And what does that mean, that this is their home?
Gone are the days where, that bears were shot, and we want to make sure that's the past, that we're not putting people at risk and putting bears at risk.
A polar bear alert team patrols the area daily, and signs remind locals and visitors of the danger.
Apparently, everyone in town leaves their car doors unlocked. So if there is a bear, you can just open a car, jump in, shut yourself inside. I was going to try a car door to see if that was true, but that seems a bit rude. But I'm assured it is. But no bears here, we've checked.
But every season, thousands of tourists come here to see the bears up close. Watching them safely from the rough tundra terrain means travelling in one of these. A tundra buggy. Also out on one is a team of scientists we're tagging along with from the organisation Polar Bears International.
We are here and we are looking for bears. So we were making lots of effort to avoid bears in town and make sure that they weren't around us. Now we're looking for bears.
With the raised vehicles, it's very safe. We're not down on the ground with the bears. You know, they're seeing these large white boxes. They can tell that we're in them, but it's a very different thing than if we were on the ground with the bears.
We catch a few distant glimpses. The bears seem distinctly disinterested in us. But when one young male decides to investigate the buggies, I am very grateful for the size of this vehicle.
There's a polar bear under a tundra buggy right now. He's very curious about us. Oh my word, that is... My heart's really beating.
It is a very confusing feeling to look into the face of an animal that is simultaneously adorable and deadly. Jeff York, a researcher who's worked in the Arctic for more than 30 years, has had to discourage a bear that was a bit too interested in his tundra buggy. It's a demonstration of how bear spray, a pepper spray that acts as a temporary repellent, works when it's needed.
You have to really think about when and where you're using it and what your options are. Yeah.
Decades of information gathered about the polar bears here over generations has shown how they're being affected by changes in the Arctic environment. As the climate warms, the population of bears here is declining because these predators' lives are tied to the cold. They need sea ice to reach and pounce on the calorie-rich seals that power their huge bodies.
They have to go out and hunt for their food.
You're right. So there's no replacement for pouncing on a seal and eating all of that blubber to keep them going.
That's exactly it. There's no, energy replacement for those ice eels and that high-fat diet.
Sea ice melting out completely in this part of the Arctic in Hudson Bay every spring and then freezing again in the fall. It creates this ice-free period where bears are forced on land, and we've seen over the last 40 years that this ice-free period has lengthened by about a month.
Does that mean there's more of a period where they're likely to be closer to people, that there's more frequency of people and bears?
It definitely increases the probability. So the longer bears are on shore, the more opportunity they have to interact with people. But the other side of that is the longer they're on shore, the longer they're fasting, and the longer they might need to start looking for alternative sources of energy and food, and sometimes those sources are us.
This loss of sea ice could threaten the survival of this population of polar bears. But for now, as the bears wait longer for the Hudson Bay to freeze, for that seal hunting platform to solidify, Churchill faces a paradox. Polar bears spending more time on shore could extend a lucrative tourist season here, but it also means that these bears will be getting hungrier. Protecting the community amid all this change, the Churchill Polar Bear Alert Team.
Got coffee, no. Now I'm set. You're always thinking ahead, yeah. You just never know when, you're gonna do a pursuit after an animal or, so you gotta take care of yourself.
Yeah. Polar Bear Alert Team patrols the town every day, and they're on call 24/7. If anyone encounters a bear, there's an emergency number to reach them.
I came down this trail and I caught him up on this deck here. It was testing the door.
What did you do?
So at that point, you haze them, right? You use your vehicle, horns, cracker shells, and you chase them in a desirable direction, which in this case would be away from town.
For stubborn bears that keep coming back, though, Ian and his team can use a humane trap.
Ian, I've got to admit to being slightly anxious here. There's a lot of places, rocks that a polar bear could hide behind.
You gotta stay vigilant all the time.
And with like the most qualified person to spot a polar bear and deal with it. So what's this? This is a polar bear trap?
Yeah, it's a live bear trap. We want to intercept any bears that are trying to dip into town, and usually this is kind of one of the areas they do that.
Right. How does it work?
So here, this door on this side here is gonna come, it's gonna come down once the bear gets inside the culvert.
Yeah.
Because that bear is pulling a trigger on the opposite end that's baited with seal meat.
When bears have to be caught, they're brought to the holding facility, where they're held until it's deemed safe to release them. Then they'll be moved, either by road or occasionally by helicopter, further along the coast, away from people.
Apparently there's 4 polar bears in there at the moment that they've had to put in the holding facility, and these ones will be, when they release them, they'll be taken in those traps on trailers, and the Polar Bear Alert team are telling us they'll take them straight out onto the bay when it's frozen. So they'll take them to the ice that they've been waiting for.
The Alert programme has been operating for more than 40 years, since a man in Churchill was attacked and killed by a bear. No one has been killed by a polar bear here since. And the programme is about protecting bears as well as people. When orphaned cubs are found near Churchill, they're rescued. Some of those young bears are brought here to Assiniboine Park Zoo in Winnipeg.
So we don't breed polar bears here because we're primarily a space for those orphan cubs that occur in Churchill. So if we were breeding, that would potentially take away space for animals that need to be rescued from the wild.
Having these bears in captivity means they can do polar bear conservation research here that's not possible in the wild.
We've had the bears here from cubs all the way up to adults with regular measurements, so we know kind of how much growth they go through and how much energy that takes. And then you can apply that in different models to say, okay, if we have a population of bears, how much resources on the landscape are needed to maintain that population? And will those resources be there in the future?
What is that? Is that
so
what it looks like?
this is lard.
That's lard.
Yep. It's just a bunch of fat. This and romaine lettuce. So we always make sure we have some romaine lettuce.
That's like 2 ends of the dietary spectrum. She loves romaine lettuce.
Loves it.
Heather is an animal care specialist who's been working with rescue polar bear Star for 10 years.
Star, come!
She uses food rewards to train Star to let her paw be poked and prodded. It's a training process for collecting fur and blood samples. They're used in veterinary care and polar bear research.
Her paw goes into this sleeve. I'm gonna just grab random things and just do different sort of tactile descents to her paw. Because the last thing we want is for her to get alarmed or scared when you try to actually put the needle in and get a blood sample, right?
Yeah.
You want her to be used to, well, it feels a little different this time. And the training, it does work. She takes her vaccinations, no problem, like a champ. She presents her shoulder, needle goes in, she holds her shoulder. She's better than I am. Good girl, you did so good. Jackpot. Lettuce.
At the zoo, walking beneath swimming polar bears, we can see how at home they are in the water. To hunt at sea, though, and find the marine prey they depend on, they need the ice. So in Churchill, while the bears are waiting for the bay to freeze, everyone is on their guard.
This is a place that takes pride in setting an example for how humans can coexist with these big predators. Everyone here that we've spoken to is very aware of it all the time. They take care of each other and they take care of themselves. They know not to walk alone at night. They know not to do things that would put them in a dangerous situation. And should we go? I can hear cracker shots over there. That means that they may be moving a bear. There's a bear there, it's crossing the road. Get in the car. We heard crackers going off and now the polar bear alert team are moving around, so we're gonna get back in the car. So you can just see it through the trees there. We could see the polar bear alert team's quad bikes and their trucks moving the bear along. They call it hazing it. Essentially it's chasing it away, but they need to chase it away in the right direction so that it's moving away from people. Kind of amazing to see.
While hungry polar bears are spending more time on shore, there are other temptations for them here. Churchill has a waste problem.
This was a building that was left to the town by the military, and the town used it for waste storage, recycling, and kind of hazardous material separation.
Right. I guess because waste is quite a significant issue when it comes to living alongside polar bears, right? They'd be attracted by it, so keeping it contained, quite important.
Keeping it contained and keeping them out of it.
Yeah.
It's still going to be an attractant. They can still smell it, but if they can't get a food reward, then they're much easier to manage and keep away from it. And this building served that purpose really well until this April when it burned to the ground.
What caused the fire?
Best they can tell, it might have been a lithium battery. Because this is gone, people in town can't just bring their trash out at will. And so more waste is being held in town, and that could bring more bears around town this year until the problem's dealt with.
We were just driving along the road just outside of Churchill by the bay, and in these rocks there's a polar bear just over here. You can see now why you do not go in these rocks. There are just so many places where these bears can just emerge from and hide, and he's completely silent.
Being here during bear season means that Jeff and the research team can test new technology that will detect any approaching polar bears. This is a motion tracking radar system known as BEARDAR.
It has artificial intelligence. And so that's what we've been doing here, is trying to actually teach it what a polar bear is. This adds another layer of security. It's 24/7 eyes on the ground. It works at night when visibility is low, and it can work in periods of blowing snow and fog. There to alert somebody that, hey, something's out there, you should take extra care.
This is a haven for wildlife. Murals here also celebrate the thousands of beluga whales that arrive in the bay every summer. Some of the huge artworks in Churchill were painted when the town was cut off by a landslide that washed away the rail line back in 2017. Artists invited in from around the world created pieces inspired by a community that's immersed in nature and that refuses to be forgotten. For local artist Sandra Cook, a respect for the natural world is fundamental in her work and family life.
The polar bear is not encroaching on Churchill. It's their land.
So it's coexistence, not conflict?
No, it doesn't have to be conflict. It's all about the respect.
How does your surroundings in this place kind of manifest itself in what inspires your art and what you do?
So this bear here that I'm drawing, maybe you're going to take a look at that bear and you're going to think about how fragile our climate actually is. Because bears really do, they're so dependent on our fragile climate. We need a mind shift. We need a shift of understanding that we are not the dominant creatures that we think we are, that we're part of this.
I completely agree with you.
That's lovely. I'm kind of really interested to know, like, your perspective as such a young person, you know, thinking about your future.
I really have a love for plants and vegetation here, so I would love to go into sciences and, you know, study Arctic and subarctic plants. I think it's awesome, and I really want to better my community, so that's why I want to be here in the future, and I really hope there is a here. Yeah.
Things are changing here as temperatures rise. Ways of life that have existed for thousands of years are shifting with the climate. But people in Churchill are resilient. They're adapting.
This is my introduction to sled dogs. You're amazing. Yes, you are. Oh, that's lovely.
Oh my goodness, it's so cute.
Dave Daly has raced sled dogs thousands of miles across the Arctic. His family business now offers much shorter trips to Churchill visitors.
I got lots of favorites, you know, for different reasons. Yeah. Like Chaga here, he's not a superstar athlete, but he's my little love bug, you know. I think that what I've seen is that the weather has become very unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get.
Must make it hard to do what you do then, because you want to
we've
be out
adapted.
in the weather. And
we've adapted. I have, I have my sleds that I designed to go on the snow, and then I built 4 carts that mimic the sleighs but on wheels.
The lengthening period when the Hudson Bay is ice-free is set to transform Churchill's port in particular. Currently, it's operational for a season that's just 3 months long before it shuts down for the long winter. That's why the new Marine Observatory that opened in summer 2024 is studying water from the bay inside the lab.
you can bring the Hudson Bay inside, put it in 2 pools.
Yes.
And then change the conditions and see what happens.
We can do all kinds of controlled experimental studies, looking into changes in the Arctic and what are the implications.
One implication of a less icy Hudson Bay is a longer season for the port, more ships coming in and out of Churchill. The team here plans to study what that could mean for the environment, including what would happen if any vessels spilled oil in the cold bay.
So you are going to spill oil in this pool and then test cleanup approaches.
Exactly. What we don't know is what if all these technologies that we developed for open ocean, for warmer ocean, are they effective in cold region? Our next experiment is specifically looking into how microbial degradation of oil may or may not occur.
Essentially how the bugs that live in the water, whether they will degrade and eat up that oil in the same way.
Yes.
Understanding exactly how the climate, the seasons and the sea ice are changing is helping Churchill prepare for the future.
What do you think this place could look like in 10 years' time?
It'll be a bustling port. And what we're looking at now is looking at extending the seasons. There's a window of opportunity to ship Manitoba products through the Manitoba port. The future looks bright.
The fate of the polar bears of the Western Hudson Bay is tied to rising temperatures here.
Polar bears only exist where there's sea ice. And in places where they historically were, where there's no longer sea ice, there are no longer polar bears. And so regardless of where in the Arctic, we know as ice melts, we stand to lose those populations.
and Churchill's future is entwined with its wildlife.
If global warming continues to happen, eventually the polar bears could stop coming here, and then that's like less money for Churchill.
But people here are resilient. They're planning for the future.
We're all being challenged. Does that mean you quit existing? No. You need to adapt to it and fine-tune what needs to happen, and you take advantage of it, right? It's not a doom and gloom world.
If they can take a look at a painting I've made of a polar bear, maybe that can spark a connection to the spirit of all of nature, all of creation. I'm not saying I want big miracles, but if one person has one mind shift in one way, that's a win.